Okay, we got settings. Hello. Let's see. Yeti. Testing microphone. If you can find a good hypnotherapist, that would be fantastic. Period. The great book, Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton, states that hypnotherapy is maybe the single best way to unwind harmful subconscious programming.
How are you?
Oh, hey.
You good?
Thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me, Keto Life.
Yeah, I know. Promo background: keto cooking for cool dudes, keto for life, whatever. How about you?
Yeah,
Look at nice little decorations on the fireplace mantle. You're rocking the home office.
rocking the home office. Got the Jew fro because of the keto, the COVID-19. Okay.
Yeah. I shaved my head in April or late March, the first time in my life. It was pretty funny. So there we are from a measurable time frame of how long we've been doing this thing.
Yeah, not bad. We're about, I'm a few months younger than you, but
Yeah.
that's it. So I get it. If it grows back, it's huge. I mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah, no complaints. Yeah. Where are you located? Do I call you Robert, Bob? What's the?
Yeah, well, Robert is great. I'm in Westchester County and 25 minutes outside of New York City.
Oh,
so
boy.
I am the epicenter where the COVID-19 started. We're 2 miles from that NeuroShell hub. And all my patients, basically everybody works in Manhattan. I practice in what we call White Plains, which is the center of Westchester. I live in the only town that is a town and a village. It's called Scarsdale, because they're so rich, they can't decide what they want to be, so they're both.
Awesome.
It's sort of my joke.
Yeah.
So when I go to work, because I've been working the last 4 weeks, I'm wearing gloves, no big deal, scrubs, which I've never worn before, mask, and a shield.
What is your practice? What do you do with your patients?
I'm a chiropractor, so I do sports injuries.
Yeah.
And I also do a lot of functional medicine.
Right on. So we're going to talk about the Superhighway To Health, the gut brain,
Sure.
other stuff you're getting into with your practice. We'll just roll it. Is the book out now?
If you want to talk keto's in my upcoming book. So
okay.
Anywhere you want to go with it.
We'll get into diet. Okay.
How about keto and why it'd be positive for gut and brain health?
Yeah, that sounds good. Let me make sure this thing is. I'm going to turn you up a little bit just for my ears, not for. Okay. Dr. Robert Silverman, we got you. The busy guy sits down and joins us for a very interesting podcast. We talked about some topics offline, so I think we better jump right into it. I know you got a book coming out, but I'd love to know about your unique medical practice there in New York, and actually the sensitivity you have here because you're so close to the coronavirus epicenter.
Yeah, I am. I live 2 miles from where the epicenter started in Westchester County, and I'm 30 minutes outside of New York City. I grew up in New York City, and so we're in the front. Westchester's that small, well, not small, but it's the first suburb. So all my patients work in Manhattan, so very sensitive. I've been doing a lot of antibody tests. About 20% of the patients have antibodies to COVID-19. We've been back at work for the last few weeks. So we are without question. Everybody has to come in. The rule of the house, not my house, but the rule is they have to come in masked. All my staff is masked. I'm wearing a mask, gloves, and I'm actually wearing a shield because with the functional medicine, we have patients that have autoimmune conditions. So I want them to feel more comfortable that we took the necessary steps. In addition, every room is sanitized after every use, one patient at a time. We limit the space in the office, so it's just 2 rooms, not so it's dispersed. So anybody who's, I know it sounds nuts, scared of air droplets, we limit it. And we're doing everything that we can, but it appears that, for us, the curve has really not only flattened, but gone down.
Oh, that's nice to hear. And what do you mean when you say 20% of your patients have the antibodies? So what does that represent?
That's a great question. So we did a lot of antibody testing because we were home for a little while. So we connected with a company to do antibodies. So there's 2 antibodies that everybody tests for, IgM and IgG. So if I had this graph, if I could make this visual graph here, what happens is that assuming you get infected with COVID-19, the average person doesn't see any symptoms for the first 5 days. 35% of people never see any symptoms. But at about day 5 or 5.1 to be exact, the symptomology becomes apparent. And the symptomology is fever, cough, and in some very more advanced instances, dyspnea. At day 7, one of your antibodies comes out, which is IgM. That's your initial antibody. It's not as potent. In day 7, it spikes up and goes through to day 21. At day 14, you've got this antibody called IgG. And it spikes up and goes through day 28. IgG is a much more potent. It's a smaller antibody. It's small enough to pass the placenta on a woman. And the IgG is very potent in that it blocks the docking station at the ACE2 receptors. So COVID-19 can't come in there. So you want to get tested for antibodies. You want to see yourself to be negative for IgM, meaning you passed it, and positive for IgG. So you have your own natural antibody. So essentially, you've been infected, you've built up your own autoimmunity. Remember, this is a novel virus. Our immune system has never seen this genome before. So our body has to now attack it, recognize it, and memorize it. Those immune systems like yours, who exercise all day, lead a keto life, probably have an immune system, if they see it, are going to respond favorably. Others who have these comorbidities, diabetes, and the such, don't respond as well, and that's where that failing health becomes. It's very simple. I tell everybody, your immune system is like you. If you studied and done your critical thinking, when you get something new, you'll respond quickly and probably quite well. If you haven't and you're not prepared and you get this new thing, you're going to stutter, you're going to feel uncomfortable, and you're not going to have a good outcome. That's what happens till you can memorize what you have to do. Same thing, and that's a problem.
So a victim who gets taken down and is severely ill or dies from the COVID-19 virus, are they not making the antibodies at all, or are they going to test? Are they going to test for them, but they're not responding well because of the comorbidities and all that?
What's interesting, so a couple of answers to that. The comorbidities, and the big comorbidities that we talk about is age. And of course, that's biological age versus chronological age. That's number one. But you get immunosenescence. So your immune cells die. Your thymus theoretically doesn't work at 70. Somebody, again, like you, doing the keto lifestyle, exercising, you're changing that dynamic. So that's one. Age is, something that we can't change on our date of birth, but we can definitely change our biological age. Some of the other ones are obesity. And within obesity, it's truly the visceral fat. and not the superficial fat. So the visceral fat is the fat which is highly inflammatory, which lays over your viscera. So again, to point to what you do, an endurance athlete with some explosion, you're probably not going to have a lot of stored visceral fat, because your diet has to be such and it's long-term exercise. So more so than the obesity, it's the prediabetes, the diabetes, the blood sugar, the cardiovascular disease, the hypertension, and the autoimmunity are methods that lead you down a path of higher susceptibility, more compromised immune system, and two, once you get it, you get a bad outcome. I'll give you a little factoid. 300 calories of sugar, decrease your immune system for 2 hours by 50%. Don't eat your Frappuccino while COVID-19 is out there.
Right. I'm thinking of some follow-up questions that might not be the most sensitive or politically correct, but I guess I'll just throw it out there. One of them that comes to mind is that is this a massive overreaction with healthy people having to shut down their economic contribution and all these things? Should we just be maybe focusing on the people of the highest risk and isolate them and quarantine them, or self-quarantine? Obviously, it's not. I'm not talking about a military state, but it seems as though I'm not up on all the numbers, but it seems like a lot of the victims are coming in with comorbidity factors to the extent that we should sit down and talk about it more so than we hear. All we're hearing on the news is, sneeze and make sure you have a mask and wipe off your car door handle. I just saw an article in the New York Times saying that the surface contact is oftentimes not enough to hit that viral load to even infect you. So here we go. Dr. Silverman's gonna haul off. It's unplugged podcast. What do you think, man?
Well, I think the viral load is huge. So I call it, you're a biker, so I'll say like guys in push-ups. So 10 push-ups for you and I and most people that we know, not a problem. That load may be too much for people. Yet if we ask for 500 push-ups consecutive, we're probably all going to falter at some point up to that. If they say, Rob, ride a bike for 10 miles, probably could, and I wouldn't like it. If they asked you to do it, you'd look at me and go, come on, man, that's not even a walk in the park. That's backwards walking. It's easy. As far as those who have the comorbidities, I will say this. Without question, we have seen the underbelly of America's health, and that our problem is Americans are not healthy. And we have too many comorbidities. 6 out of 10 Americans have one comorbidity. 75%.
6 out of 10?
6 out of 10.
Oh,
one.
Mercy.
40% have two.
Okay, so I guess we do have to quarantine. We have to shut the economy down. I mean, 6 out of 10, that's... And those are the ones...
have one comorbidity.
You mentioned them as diabetes, high blood pressure,
diabetes,
obesity.
high blood pressure, obesity, goodness gracious, neurodegenerative disease, autoimmune. And I didn't get to the real comorbidities, which would be like a leaky gut. And okay, so 75% of Americans are either overweight or obese. 75, 3 out of 4. And only 12% of Americans, 12, have metabolically healthy, active systems. That's 1 in 7.5. The number one reason that people got hospitalized from the age group of 18 to 65 was obesity. Number one reason over 65, hypertension. So, I mean, I'm 18 to 65, unfortunately closer to 65 than 18, though I like to think I'm 18. 18 to 65 in America was obesity. I mean, I think that's enough said. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't close down or we should have closed down. I'm just saying that if we were healthier and we did some of the things that they said with the social distance and, how many times have we gone into a lavatory and seen somebody use a lavatory and not wash their hands? And figure, he didn't wash his hands, he was in a rush. How are we looking at that individual now? When was the last time you walked in the chiropractor's office and they had gloves on? We're all going to be wearing gloves. Right now, it's all about health. When was the last time we talked about diet? Now, I know you're a big keto guy. I would ask you, how many people who follow the keto and the clean keto would be obese or have visceral fat? as compared to those eating the Western diet or the standard American diet?
Not many.
How many bikers? I do CrossFit to stay in shape. I used to play basketball, less. So we see all those ex-athletes and we go, why did they get so heavy? They're not playing anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big one. I mean, there's, some good science that's being popularized now. Dr. Jason Fung, the obesity code, enjoyed the way he presented this, that it's almost entirely diet and insulin production as what's your factor for having excess body fat or not. And so there are a certain percentage of active people that still carry excess body fat because their diet's terrible. You can't out exercise a lousy diet. And you set the example of keto, and I think we get so controversial in the diet world, and the whole food plant-based people are very strong and passionate and arguing in favor of an entirely different direction than the ancestral primal approach. But they all have something in common, which is a departure from that nasty standard American diet baseline of chowing down the refined sugars and grains and industrial seed oils.
Well, let me piggyback on what you just said, because I utilize keto in my office. Now, we can talk about genetic markers and if every individual can absorb saturated fat, which would be the highest level. But let's talk about what the Western diet is, exactly what you said, refined sugars. Sugar works with the reward center in the brain. When mice were offered sugar, 94% of mice took sugar over cocaine. Sugar is deleterious to overall health. There's no essential carbohydrates. There are essential fats and there are essential amino acids. So I tell my patients, when you're not sure, fat and protein are a better choice than carbohydrates and something else. Not to say that fruits and berries don't have their place. They do. Studies have been shown that athletes for both endurance and power are better suited as long as they're burning those ketone bodies and burning fat as ketones, and they've gone through the ketogenesis cycle as versus carbohydrates. And it was the marathon runners who did that carbohydrate loading, which makes no sense because it's only 2,000 calories. And as well, that's not enough for any kind of long-term endurance. It's great if you want to go bench press, but is it really? Because fat is 2.25 times more energetic than carbohydrates. And of course, good quality fat. We're not talking of trans fats and the fats that are most targeted for you. So I've taken my genetics and found out that I'm not great with saturated fat. Okay, but all the other fats work well, and there's still protein, and I can have some carbohydrates if I don't want 6% body fat.
Yeah, I like the way you put that in the athletic example, that we've been obsessed with carbohydrate loading, carbohydrate replenishment, and it's kind of like topping off a tank, and then the rest of the gas tank is inaccessible, the fat stores on the body. And we've just been, circulating through this frequent small meals, energy bars, energy gels, drinks. And it makes no sense, but it took, decades and decades to wake up, and the science helped. The faster study that you referenced, where the high fat people were they were still able to replenish glycogen even though they didn't consume carbohydrates. Fascinating insights like that. But finally we're getting to that point. But boy, the battle's tough to fight because of the cultural programming.
Absolutely. And you also have to train to eat the carbs, because once you go over 60 grams of carbs, which is 240 calories, which isn't much, if you haven't trained your gut, you're not going to absorb it. So, but most people don't train. They just say, oh, I'm just going to do carbs. So if you're going to train, you're still beneficial if you train to take fats. Again, you can always go to your genetics, but I have to tell you something. People aren't really finding out they're good carb burners. They're finding out that they're good fat burners. And again, the studies that you talked about were great in that when I initially saw the keto, I thought it would make sense for an endurance athlete because it's stored. What is it? 40,000 calories you can store in fat and only 2,000 stored in carbs. I mean, let's be real. Look at that. That's 20 times. The numbers speak volumes. And what happens after you take the carb in? The sugar drops, you drop. And what's more damaging to your gut? Carbs. Sugar is damaging to your gut. So if you want good gut health, you want to absorb your nutrients, you don't want to pool your blood in your stomach. Fat and good quality fats are a much better choice. And why does autophagy work? Why does intermittent fasting work? because you've made the switch from carbohydrate burning to fat burning.
Hey, let's talk about that impact. I know you're really big on gut health. That's a fundamental part of your practice, your upcoming book, The Superhighway to Health. Talk about how sugar is so damaging to gut function and what's going on there with this concept that I think most people I speak to, it's a big deal in cutting edge progressive health circles, the gut microbiome, but most people out there on the street, they're going a little bit blank when you talk about your gut health.
80% of your immune cells are in your gut. It's where your macro and micronutrients are absorbed. And it makes so much sense. When I've asked the gurus, and one of note, the father of functional medicine, Jeff Bland, I said, why did they put all our immune system in our gut? And he goes, it really makes perfect sense. The bulk of the pathogens come from what we're eating. So even good food has pathogens. So why not put it there? Why not ensure that it goes there to decide what goes through your body and what gets expelled out?
We're worried about getting sneezed on while we're slamming donuts.
It's funny you say about the gut. I'm going to just divert when you talked about it. So interestingly enough, we talked about obesity. We talked about hypertension. We talked about diabetes. We talked about neurodegeneration. All of them can be attributed to the gut. When COVID-19 was studied, 53.4% of the people who tested positive for COVID-19 had the virus in their stool. 23.4% had it when they were testing negative. You will shed the virus 28 days after the abatement of fever in your stool. So if you really wanted to take the right test, the test would be the swab to see if you have it right now, the autoantibodies to see where you are with your immune system, and you would take a poop test to see if you're shedding, because if you're shedding, obviously you have to tell everybody at home, we've got to make extra careful cleaning of the bathroom because it's fecal oral. So people say, what are you worried about? I said, I'm still wearing gloves. Why? I'm going to wear gloves on a plane because when I go in the bathroom, I'm going to be able to throw them away. I'm certainly going to clean because of the fecal oral transmission. Obviously, it can be on my hands. I have to do this. But people don't realize that the droplets are easy because these are open. Mm-hmm. But fecal orally transmitted it is. And by the way, those ACE2 receptors are plentiful in the gut. And there's a direct gut, this is 2021, gut to lung axis. So we know gut to brain, and we also know gut to lung. I don't want to push it too much. We'll circle back and get back into your gut, but the centerpiece of your health, the centerpiece of your performance is your gut and your gut communicating with your brain.
How does it communicate with the brain?
It's funny, I get to ask that question all the time. It's three ways. Number one, what passes your gut and goes into your bloodstream, the nutrients, that's number one. So it's bloodstream. Number two, hormones. Many of the hormones come from your gut to your brain. And number three, and maybe the most important one, it's called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is a cranial nerve. It goes from your brainstem, medulla oblongata, down through your transverse colon, attaches to the outside of your transverse colon. It's actually 80 to 90% sensory, so it senses what's going on inside your gut and all the signals and communicates with your brain that quick. So it's interesting. So people eat a pizza pie and they'll go, oh, and I'm like, whatever your gut feels, your brain feels. Do you get gas and bloating after you eat? Yeah, I do. Do you know why you don't have any pain? No, there's no pain fibers in your gut. Are you lethargic after you eat a bad meal? Yeah, I get a brain fog. Well, why fog and no pain? What? No pain receptors in your brain. Whatever you do to your gut, you do to your brain. Whatever you do to your brain, you do to your gut. And as an athlete, which you are an elite athlete, that's a critical takeaway. So at the higher levels, the pro athletes who come in, after we fix the problems, their movement problems, any systemic problems, they've got to, at some point, adhere to the concept of they have to keep themselves in good gut health. That's why I change their diet. That's why I emphasize gut. And they've found out that if they improve their gut health, they improve their performance. Djokovic, he wasn't my patient. Djokovic is a great example. Got rid of gluten, and look at all the Grand Slams he won. And he's in the top 3 to 5 greatest tennis players ever. Never won a Grand Slam before he went gluten-free.
The gluten-free Grand Slam. So the vagus nerve is going from the brain to the gut.
Correct.
When we get nervous before it's time to give our speech, we feel the butterflies in our stomach, or you're in love and you have these sensations in your digestive tract. And that's a good, valid example of the gut-brain connection.
Correct. Correct. That's a great example of your gut-brain connection.
Tell me about the serotonin. I've heard these stats that most of it's made down in the intestinal tract, the important brain neurotransmitter.
93% of your serotonin is made in your gut. Your amyloids, when people are so concerned about Alzheimer's, are made in your gut. Leaky gut gets from your gut to your brain, pierces your blood-brain barrier. Your gut and your blood-brain barrier are made up of the same proteins. They're both single-layer epithelial cells. They have the thickness of a wet paper towel. Your blood-brain barrier is interesting in that it filters 400 miles of arteries. Your gut is interesting in that it has a different lymph system than your brain. But structurally, they're the same thickness. And your brain's only 3 pounds made out of jello. However, if something passes your gut and gets into your bloodstream, you now have the different legs of your immune system to attack it. If it passes your blood-brain barrier, all that it has to feast on is brain tissue. Hence the idea of the gut-to-brain axis being critical for neural degeneration.
You said the brain weighs 3 pounns?
3 pounds.
Okay, and mine was weighed at 3.9, so I was just curious what the average. Just kidding. Dr. Rob, you're the stat man. I love this show. I'm taking all these notes. I mean, 93% of the mood elevating hormone neurotransmitter serotonin made in the gut. We are tight. We got to get that connection right. And you mentioned briefly the impact of sugar on harming the gut and causing all these downstream problems to our brain function and other areas of health. So can we get into that a little bit?
Absolutely. I want to give you another factoid that I think you'll like. The brain is 60 to 70% fat. So who woke up and told me to consume carbohydrates to fuel it? Because I want to know. Because when I was playing basketball, I don't think I was going to be Michael Jordan anyway, but maybe I would have scored a few more points in college at my little school. So when you think about it, it's made out of fat. So what better choice to fuel it? Alzheimer's, you know what that used to be called? Diabetes type 3.
Oh, I thought that was a new novel nickname that's catching on, and so important to reflect upon that strong connection between your diet and the cognitive decline.
It is a diet and a cognitive decline. A lot has to do with your gut and your cognitive decline. So they just had a study that came out that 50% of the issues from Parkinson's come from your gut. So it would be fair to say that any neurodegenerative disease, you would benefit from also addressing gut health. Any gut issue, you should also address brain health, since they're communicating in milliseconds.
Where do we stand in mainstream medicine with these concepts? I know it's been almost entirely ignored for decades, centuries since the advent of Western medicine. But now you can read articles, there's books, there's guys like you who are promoting the heck out of this and hands-on with patients. But if you walk into the ER or your family medicine checkup, how are we doing with the gut health importance catching on?
It's not moving quick enough. There is a small growth. It's unfortunate. I just had a patient come in yesterday. Old patient of mine. They want to do some alternative. They have ALS. So I sat down with him. He's got great doctors at 2 respective universities in different states. Fabulous. He was going to an integrative doctor. The integrative doctor gave him nothing for gut and nothing for brain, but he gave him a plethora of other supplements. I looked at him and I said, I just want you to change 3 things before you come back. Very simple. No gluten, no dairy, no sugar. If you take those 3 things out, I'll be very happy, even if it's one at a time. And he looked at me and he's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm serious as a heart attack. And he's like, I won't even ask why. Do you understand that I was told to keep my weight on? I said, I think they mean keep your muscle mass on. They didn't phrase it well. So there's a little bit of a parlance issue there, but that's not a problem. And he's like, yeah, but cheese. I eat cheese all day. I eat grilled cheese. He said, sugar's in everything. And they told me to eat for my condition, milkshakes to keep my weight on. And I'm just like, so it's carbs, sugar, and dairy. Maybe
All together in the same
get the
meal.
Wonder Bread in there. And I said to him, here's the list. You don't have to listen to me. Just go Google. Here's my number. Text me. Text me tonight. He goes, I can't believe I wasn't told. So there you have it. So it's not as eclectic. That's why podcasts like you, that's why you have all those books. That's why people come to us. It's not we're saying in place of, we're saying in conjunction with, as an alternative. And I hate the word alternative because what we did was first, but the other guys coined it better. So now we're alternative to medical model. And I love the medical model because I think they do some great things. Unfortunately, right now, they don't have anything for COVID-19. So the alternative model is your best option, clearly. And it would always be your best option to help prevent. I'm not looking to walk in a room with 30 people with COVID-19 and breathe on me. I'm not being that presumptuous. I'm just saying everybody does better the better they take care of themselves. It's just like a house. The more you work on a foundation, the better chance you have it for lasting longer.
So if you have a patient with COVID-19, or maybe you got them in that 5-day window when they tested positive, they got sneezed on, they rush over to your office, what are you going to recommend they do to fight this battle?
Well, of course, I'm going to adhere to everything, social distance, stay home, quarantine, change your diet, don't eat anything that's immunocompromising, any of the foods that we aforementioned, and give them 3, 4, 5 supplements and hope that it works to quench their cytokine storm, like vitamin D3 with K2. Great literature on that. We're not saying anything treats COVID-19. We're not going to make that statement. Nobody's allowed to make that statement. But I would still strongly recommend D3 with K2. Recommend, without question, zinc. Recommend L-glutathione, the master antioxidant, which is shown to ameliorate 1 million free radicals per molecule. In addition, something that people don't talk about as much called pro-resolving mediators. They're the next step there for the fish oils that allow for the resolution of inflammation. And they're a great choice. They're sort of not talked about enough in the functional medicine world. And guess what? I would do everything I can to get good bacteria in their gut and with a full spectrum probiotic.
Nice. How about the keto diet? How does that enter into your practice?
I use the keto diet often. I'm a big keto supporter. Again, I always test. Now, the real question isn't that the keto is right for you. The question is it right for you and for what duration of time? Because we all know everybody benefits from the keto for 3 months. The question is, will it be 30 years? And we have to see how you adhere to it. And when we say keto, I always like to talk about clean keto, not dirty keto. Dirty keto is the sausage versus the organic chicken sausage. Hey, you know what I had? I went and I had salami. It's keto. I go, I don't think that processed meat was what they meant. I think that you're creative liberties with that. So big proponent of keto. A lot of examples, people in SIBO, and you're going to get a lot of people writing in, but I'm going to go for it. So we're going to pit her on the controversy. Everybody does that FODMAP. And I asked them, okay, which FODMAP? Because it's about 18 of them. Let me know which one works for you. Not a problem because it's low in carbohydrates and it's an easier diet to be compliant with. FODMAP can be very difficult. So I use the keto a lot with gut issues. Now I make some changes. I may not give as much saturated fat or all the saturated fat in the keto. So I'll go more mono and polyunsaturated, but it's still keto-esque. Interesting. The idea of this fast mimicking diets are producing ketone bodies. And that's the sweet spot as well, for the ketogenic diet. Beta-hydroxybutyrate is the gold medal winner. We know that it's an uncoupling molecule that opens up the cell membrane, and it's great for brain health and fuel, and it's been shown to help with athletic performance. So why wouldn't you want to get it either endogenously or exogenously?
As a supplement form.
Sure.
Right.
By the way, the keto diet's outstanding for neurodegenerative disease, and I treat a lot of concussions. When patients come in, I want them in ketosis immediately, so I give them MCT oil and ketone salts right away.
Right. So let's talk about why that's so beneficial, especially a acute concussion victim has the brain swelling. I think I've had 4 of them in my life. One of them severe, hospitalized in critical care for a while, and there was no discussion of diet. I probably got the orange sherbet on my plate, and the dairy milk, and the sauce covered chicken breast. Who knows what? But when you're in that acute phase and you have this treatment modality that's now getting popular with people like you, maybe not in the mainstream ER. What's going on when you consume ketones and MCT oil?
Well, MCT oil is pure brain fuel. It's able to pass the membrane, go through the liver much quicker. So immediately getting fuel. Carbohydrates are a long, involved process, and it's not as potent. And the unfortunate thing with the carbohydrates, because if it's inflammatory component, you're actually causing inflammation to the brain. And that's the last thing you want to do with a concussion. So the keto diet is a true choice for concussions and other neurodegenerative diseases. The brain functions on fuel. It loves ketone bodies. It was made for that.
Right. The sugar has inflammatory aspects to it. So if your brain's burning sugar, it's burning sort of a dirty fuel, where the ketone bodies are anti-inflammatory properties, all kinds of other benefits to them, reducing inflammation, improving oxygen delivery. So you're kind of transitioning from a glucose burning brain to a brain that can burn ketones. Now, when you take the MCT oil, we know this to be like a catalyst to spur ketone production. So is that what you're talking about? I mean, the brain's not able to burn fat directly, right? It's burning ketones or glucose.
Correct. It's burning those ketone bodies. And the MCT oil is known to have C8 and C10, which are much more energetic, whereas just coconut oil also has lauric acid, which is great, but C12. But it's a long chain fatty acid, but it was named the medium chain. The medium chain triglycerides that come from which is MCT oil, are the right structure and quickness to enable the brain to function properly. Because like you said, it's clean, fast fuel. It's race car driver fuel.
So if you want to buy into this diet, you've read some exciting books, you're going to give it a try and hope that your brain will burn cleaner fuel, you can actually transition from, I guess, if you're in a standard American dietary pattern, you're burning 100% glucose in the brain because you're hardly ever making any ketones, and you can move that dial pretty far over to burning a majority of ketones.
Absolutely. That is the sweet spot, that transition. And that's really health when you're able to make that transition. It's so interesting how we're seeing all these things, all these health benefits are based. The intermittent fasting, why, you're getting the autophagy, but how do you know when you're getting the autophagy? When you start using fat versus carbohydrates. So again, fat is a potent, cleaner fuel versus carbohydrates. No one's saying you don't have to have carbs, but I just don't think you need a lot of them, and you need good choice carbs. And they taste good. Apples are great. You have a 8 veggie drink and you want to put a green apple in, kumbaya. It's 80 calories. Go for it, especially if you're a little active. But when people say I made a green drink, I put 1 green and 6 fruits, no bueno. Not happening. Hey, I've got this great detox. Let me guess. How many fruits do you have? Oh, yeah, it's a fruit detox. So do you realize that sugar doesn't allow you to detox? Another way that adversely affects the brain. Too much sugar disproportionately affects your detoxification. Your liver can't break down toxins. What happens? Those toxins are recirculating, and they recirculate and hit your brain, amongst other organs.
Whew. Right. The excess carb intake causing excess insulin production puts you in this oxidative and inflammatory state, which is the basis for all disease. So I like how you made that point. The carbs are okay. They're nutritious, they're healthy, but I think we have to clarify that when they're consumed in excess, then comes all kinds of problems. And this is the main problem in modern life, is the excess carb intake driving excess insulin production. So, the athletic types who can go and burn off their glycogen and then replenish with a fruit smoothie, far less damaging than someone who's sitting at their desk going to Jamba Juice thinking they're having a healthy morning.
Jamba Juice, oh my goodness. Yeah,
This show is sponsored by Jamba Juice. No, it's not. Sorry. Okay.
yeah. It's so funny because, sugar again being so, it's the most consumed drug in America, and people are hooked on sugar. So it's funny. Well, I was in Canada when they made marijuana legal, and I didn't realize that that had happened. So I asked the Uber driver, I said, why is there like a 5-block line for the drugstore? He goes, marijuana legal. And I laughed, and he goes, what's so funny, America? And I said, if they made sugar legal, it'd be a 5-mile line. But if they said avocados were on sale, there'd be 3 people online for it. And that's the problem. And that circles back to what we talked about with the comorbidities. It's all about good quality diet and the best diet for you genetically.
Right. So you have these real live patients. You're not just sitting here studying things and researching. You got people coming through your door, these tough, hard-nosed New Yorkers. They know what they know a lot. We love those guys. But you're saying you're putting them on a ketogenic diet. So walk me through sort of your success formula to get someone to actually adhere to what you're saying during your office visit and have them, make progress over 3 months time, 6 months time, 2 years.
Well, what we're finding out that enables people to make the most success is food lists and food recipes. If I just say 70% fat and 25% protein and 5% carbohydrate, they don't understand that. Even if they were to do grams, again, it would be, that is actually 75% of your calories should come from fat, 20% come from protein, and about 5% from carbohydrates, give or take. Unless you decrease your calories substantially and you go low, you can then also be in ketogenesis. But we don't like 1,200 calorie diets. So what we do is, again, we give food lists. We explain the difference. And I always use an analogy. Have you ever had a whole pizza pie? And everybody at some point did the dominoes. One time in their life. Even I did it. They did it. My question is, it took you the whole pie till you felt full. Yeah, it did. And how bad did you feel afterwards? Oh, no, I felt like crap. Right, your stomach hurt. You had to lay in bed the next day. And you knew that you shouldn't have eaten. Oh, my stomach, all this. If you had one avocado, which is 1/5 of the calories, say 500 to 2,500, if you will. Did you feel sick? No. Were you hungry? No. So you had a sense of fullness. Yes. So that's called satiety. It's not caloric fullness. It's nutrient fullness. So let's define satiety the right way. So what does that tell you? It's not calories. It's chemicals. It's not calories. It's quality. It's not calories, it's macronutrients. So now that we covered that, let's eat macronutrients that give you satiety and enrich you with health. Because if you want to have something, then you have the calories now to have it. If you wanted to have a cheesecake, which you shouldn't have, but the cheesecake that we have is cashew nut and chocolate and dark chocolate and everything like that. People say you're eating that and you're able to keep your body fat and you're not someone who runs. And I'm like, it's chemicals. It's not calories. That's rudimentary. Now, granted, if you're doing what Lance Armstrong did in the Tour de France or Michael Phelps, it's at a certain point it gets to calories. But let's be real. How many people are walking in my office named Michael Phelps or Lance Armstrong? There's only 1 or 2 of those guys in the world ever. So that's a very unique athlete.
That's a great quote, man. Chemicals, not calories. So when you consume that avocado, tell me what's going on in the gut, in the brain. How does this satiety phenomenon occur?
Well, that monounsaturated fat is doing a great job in your gut. It's actually a perfect fuel for your gut. It's actually not irritating what we call your microvilli. And it's your stomach or your gut is communicating with your brain and telling your brain everything is copacetic. Sugar, it's a drug. It's the most consumed drug. Again, and it's very damaging to the gut lining. So the gut lining is interesting. You have the immune system at the bottom. You got this mucous membrane on top, and you got this microvilli. If you damage these shaggy carpets, which grab nutrients, you're now at a mucous membrane. If you damage that mucous membrane, you're at an immune system. That poses an issue. Fuel. What's good fuel for your gut? Fat. What's good fuel for pathogens in your gut? Sugar. So you're feeding the bad guy. So would you come in your house if you had if you had house invaders? Would you feed your family or would you feed the invaders? When you give them carbohydrate, you're feeding the invaders. You forgot about your family. It's simple.
You're giving them you're giving the burglars a hot fudge sundae.
Absolutely. They'll fall asleep and get lethargic and you can overtake them. Exactly.
So, yeah. So the sugar goes in, and what does it do to the microvilli? How does it damage it?
It damages microvilli because, sugar is inflammatory. In addition to that, it actually feeds all the pathogens, bacteria, viruses, and the like. They love it. So we don't really love sugar. Our brain loves sugar because, again, it works with the reward center of our brain. It's a drug, but our body doesn't really like sugar. It processes it quickly and passes it out. By the way, one of the quickest ways to fatty liver or non-alcoholic fatty liver is sugar. 50% of people who walked in a study with COVID-19 had non-alcoholic fatty liver. By the time they were out of the hospital, it was 75.2%. So the liver is under attack all the time. One of the worst things you can do for the liver, right? If you think about it, non-alcoholic fatty liver. By the way, alcohol, carbohydrate, fat, carbohydrate. Oh, and here's what happened. And here's why we think fat is a foe and not a friend. It's very simple. In the 70s, the US government wanted universal health care, and they wanted to stop heart attacks. So they got all the cardiologists in the world together, and they said, how do we stop it? And the cardiologists at the time, in their infinite wisdom, said, fat is a foe. It is not a friend. Why? They based it on one article, well, which is not enough. One article in 1965 at Harvard University with 3 researchers. 50 years later, 2015, those 3 researchers had perished. They revealed that those researchers were paid off by a sugar company to say that sugar was okay and fat was bad. So everything we've always said about sugar and fat that people talk about was wrong because we were lied to. So look at the new literature and look at the new literature of fat versus carbohydrates, drastically different. And again, there are some addendums to the fat and not for everybody, maybe to the keto diet, but certainly good quality fat is your friend. It is not your foe.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy reference you just made. You can learn more details about it in great books like Denise Minger's Death by Food Pyramid. I don't know if that's the Minnesota coronary experiment that you were referring to or connected in some way, because I've read about that where, they dug up in some guy's basement, files that were withheld, information distorted. That guy Ansel Keys gets a really bad rap for falsifying science and then presenting it to the United States government, the McGovern Commission, the former senator. And all of a sudden, we had this dietary policy pounded down our throats for decades that went unquestioned, with research falling in line to finding out ways to call saturated fat bad and kind of forgetting about the contributory factor of sugar. And even today, it still hangs on with people that aren't living and breathing health and science. And boy, I'm just crossing my fingers, hoping, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, everyone's going to acknowledge that we were flat out wrong for years and decades and need to unwind this.
Well, I don't have a problem as things evolve. But when it started out, it's a strong word, but started out on a lie, that's an issue because we all evolve. I'm sure you train differently now than you did before because you know more through life's experience and literature experience. But if somebody told you, the fastest way to win a cycling race is you cycle backwards and let everybody else cycle forward, you'd be pretty perturbed at this point. And that's essentially what they said. It would have been much better off if people would look at literature and understand and go. And the problem is, and a lot of practitioners don't read the new stuff. And change is hard. Because if you have to change in yourself, it's one thing. But now you're asking somebody to change. That look that patient gives you, where, do you realize you're asking me to change what I've done? I've made it this far. Mm-hmm. And my answer is, what you've done has driven you into the office. What I'm going to do is drive you out of the office. Your call. You still have choice. And that takes a lot away. Now, I'll help you. Your choice. Just think of jumping out of a plane. You're up here now. You want to go? Let's do it. I'll do it with you. If not, it's not a problem. I wouldn't jump out of a plane. I'm afraid of heights, but I hope everybody gets the analogy.
Well, that's a good distinction you make there, because people that are, uh, living and breathing their life's work, doing the best they can with the research and the tools they have available, and making a, devoted effort to help people be healthier. What can you say about that? We're going to continually evolve, just like the athletic training example. Absolutely. I wish I'd known what I know now back then, because we did things, a lot of things really wrong. And we were highly, best intentions. We're eating that grain-based diet because everyone said that's the way to go. That's the fuel your muscles need, is that brown rice and that lentil soup. But yeah, starting with a lie, or getting, paid off by special interests, that's the kind of thing that's, a disgrace. And these people's names shall live forever in disgrace, for, bringing that that bad energy to the world in favor of personal gain, or I guess in a lot of cases ego, or preserving your reputation. You mentioned how people are so close-minded. Mark Manson's book, your neighbor there in New York City, the best-selling author, he said, the research shows that people basically almost never change their mind, no matter what. And you're fighting a losing battle until someone's open and receptive. That's what's cool about your thing, is you got a patient in your room. That's showing a little bit of openness and receptivity, because they're paying you, and they've scheduled an hour to go see you and try to get healthier. So I would assume your success rate with getting people to adopt a dietary transformation is much better than the guy you're sitting next to on the subway. But still probably be a challenge.
It's a funny thing that what we're doing now are great because people hear it, and it's a podcast, and you're not that guy that's locally in the neighborhood that they saw you at the gym or something.
Right.
They don't know that you're just coming back from Dubai and talking to like 1,000 docs. So this is great. And I really appreciate being on, and I really appreciate that you message everything, and being such a, competitive athlete like you were, and holding a couple of world records. Some really cool ones too, man. That was really cool. Looked you up. Love it.
Thanks,
and it gives every one of us the opportunity to have a platform and to bring value to people's lives. Because at the end of the day, you can't take anything with you, but somebody else does write your tombstone.
Oh man, that's a great finish. I love catching up with you. You're the stat king of the podcast world. I don't think anyone's topped that in this hour show. So let's talk about where we can get your book and how to connect with you if you're out there. The Superhighway to Health is now available, right?
The Superhighway to Health will be available in October. There was a little delay.
Okay.
COVID-19 has done it.
Yeah.
Superhighway to Health, 7 steps to optimizing the gut-brain axis. Dr. Robert Silverman. Really easy. My website is Dr. Robert Silverman. My Facebook, do a lot of social media like you, is Dr. Robert Silverman. We've got a podcast, which you are now cordially invited to come on. It's called Proven Health Alternatives. So you let me know when you can, and we'll just knock it out of the park and share the keto life with all of my followers and everybody, and start imbuing people with enthusiasm to understand that health is wealth.
Very nice. Dr. Robert Silverman, killing it. Thank you for spending time. Da, 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 da.